Dr. Zaculus, what are we doing out here on this misty moor? So far from the manor house in the village.
Stout heart, young lad.
Oh, what's that in the distance?
We're out here looking for a very particular creature. One of a canine variety.
I fear I hear a spectral dog in the distance. Oh, and all I have left, I've lost my ghost hunting equipment. All I have left is this tube of Pringles.
Well, I'm afraid you'll have to use just your nerve and that tube of Pringles, my dear lad. Now ready the butterfly catching net.
That's not going to do anything against this dog.
You must trust me. Stout heart, mark my footsteps, my good lad.
Hold me close, Dr. Zaculus.
Hold me closer, tiny dancer.
Hold me closer, Dr. Zaculus.
Wow, Dr. Zaculus. That
I like him. He's like a he wears like a long herringbone coat, and he hunts spectral hounds out on the moors.
mm-hmm,
And the
mm-hmm.
moors. The moors.
So I am super excited for our episode today.
Yeah. Who let the dogs out? Well, this is not gonna. You're not doing it. This is never gonna get old though. I'm gonna get you to do it before the end.
Okay. If I do it now, can I just get it over with?
Yeah, you can do it. Who let the dogs out? There, now it's over. See, that wasn't so bad.
No, it wasn't.
You built it up in your head like it was gonna be this real demeaning, huge thing, and it's over now. It's over. It's like getting a shot.
One of my favorite things ever, and I still think about it, was years and years ago when that song first came out, and I once saw this old man with a t-shirt that just said, "I let the dogs out."
It was me.
And it was great because it was like this old guy that, probably didn't really know what shirt, it was probably just a donation that he was wearing.
Yeah. Probably. Oh, I'm not like a, It's funny that since having Pepper, I've become like, well, we've talked about this. You have Milo, and Pepper has made me more of a dog appreciator now. And I just remember, before having a dog, I would not have. There was a cartoon that I would not have connected to, but then since I had a dog, there was this little one-panel cartoon where it's a dog quiz, and there's 3 questions, and it's who's a good boy.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it? Is it you? like after having Pepper, I'm like, oh, I really like this gag. This is really fun. But before, it would have meant nothing to me.
Yeah. No, dogs are angelic beings, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're going to talk about that today.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk about dogs. There will be some spectral dogs. Some. I'm very curious to see what you come up with for this, because we talked about our last episode. We did monsters that suck, and that was petitioned by you.
Yeah,
and
this
I had
a
one,
fun time with it.
Yeah,
this is your baby. This one.
This one, I was like, I want to talk about dogs. I want to talk about fairy tale, folklore, mythological dogs. And so I think we should just get right to it.
Yeah, me too. Let's go for it.
I'm going to insist. Well, see, I was going to do the coin toss. No, I guess we should keep it fair, right? I want to go last, but
I don't mind mixing things up. I don't mind.
No, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Okay.
This is the way we do things around here at the Monster Market, and far be it from any of us to change the rules that we made.
We got to stay honest.
Yeah.
With the process.
All right. So, listeners may remember that I have my Ewok coin with the Ewok on the back and the Duloc Shaman on the front. The Shaman being heads, the Ewok being tails. Mr. Hacky, I'm going to let you call it in the air. Ready?
Okay.
And flip.
Ewok.
It's Ewok.
Oh, that's
so you get to pick.
Boy,
you go first or second.
I get to pick.
You get to pick.
I'll go first. I'll admit I have I have notes for my 3, and I was actually a little bit torn on which one to do first, but I am going to go first with Black Dog. I mean, I feel like this one's pretty common, right? Okay, so I like to have sort of origin stories or reasons for my picks. I like to have my picks connected to experiences. And this last,
in some ways, the monsters pick you.
That's the feeling I want to give myself, that fate or the monsters have picked me in this way, and that's why I got Black Dog. That's why it came to me. I've just started doing events and stuff again, and I was invited out to this college in Chicago to do a young authors festival, and I had an opportunity, which didn't work out, to get together with our friend Landis Blair. And we were talking about, because he's not far from where I was going to be, and we had talked about meeting up, and he was talking about some of the spots in between Palo Heights area of Illinois and more closer to the center of Chicago where he was going to be. And one of the places he mentioned was Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. I looked up, we didn't meet up at Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, but I ended up looking it up, and it ends up being a place where I'd very much like to visit with you if we ever do a fringe pilgrimage or a ghost hunting mission, because it's, it's a beautiful old cemetery, but it's also one of the very haunted places in America. And it had lots of interesting ghosts and specters, a classic white lady. It also had a two-headed ghost, which, if we went there, I'd love to see a two-headed ghost. It had spectral monks, and it had a black dog. And when I saw that, I thought, they're everywhere. I'm going to do Black Dog because this is such a prevalent ghostly manifestation. And so
ubiquitous, even.
Almost ubiquitous, yeah. And so so I like the Black Dog. There's a lot of Black Dog legends. To start us off, I'm going to consult my handy Spirits, Fairies, Leprechauns, and Goblins Encyclopedia by Carol Rose, because I always love a read aloud. So this is the name of a type of fiend or terrifying spirit found in folklore throughout most of the southern and eastern English counties. Now we see it, immigrating to Chicago being spreading. Sometimes in Scotland, they appear under many different names in other regions. These spirits take the shape of huge, shaggy-haired black dog, said to be about the size of a calf, with enormous, glowing, fiery red eyes. Some are reported to be malicious, and some can be quite benevolent at times. Black dogs or black hounds are usually encountered on lonely tracks, ancient roads and crossroads, bridges and entrances, the places of transition in human lives. And I feel like with my three, that's going to be kind of the theme that comes back, places of transition, which is a common place for monsters to be. They are normally benign if left alone and are often said to be the guardian spirit of some ancient treasure or sacred place. If anyone attempts to strike out or engage them in any way, then the black dogs can show most frightful powers, inflicting savage wounds, paralysis, death. Then they vanish before the eyes of any survivor. To see one is supposed to portend death within a year. However, in some parts of England, Wycombe and Somerset, there are well-known instances of black dogs appearing to lost travelers or frightened girls traveling alone and guiding them safely home.
Aww.
Yeah, and if you look up black dogs, even if you just jump into the wiki of black dogs, there are there's just dozens of black dogs from different regions. The first one I think in that list is really typical: the black dog of Aylesbury. A man who lived in the village near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire would go each morning to milk his cows in a distant field. One night on his way there, he encountered a sinister black dog, and every night thereafter until he brought a friend along with him. When the dog appeared again, he attacked it using a yoke of his milk pails as a weapon. But when he did so, the dog vanished, and the man fell senseless to the ground. He was carried home alive, but remained speechless and paralytic for the rest of his life. And that's what I love. I love it when you encounter a spectral form or the frightening other and it changes you forever. And very often we have these tales of where to explain maybe why somebody has this affliction for the rest of their life, right?
Right, because he saw the black dog.
Yeah, it's got to be something. So it must be because he saw the black dog.
The thing that I think is interesting too is the idea of the black dog as a guide, or as, you know, a protector or guardian spirit, and not necessarily, I mean, it's got this frightening appearance. You
Right.
know, if you saw a big shaggy dog the size of a calf,
Yeah.
you know, even without fiery eyes or whatever, you'd feel a little apprehension. But yeah, I think it speaks so much to this connection between humans and dogs throughout, you know, cultures. And certainly there are some cultures where dogs are seen as dirty and or unclean, and then there are cultures where dogs are, you know, I'm thinking particularly about, like, you know, Celts, and in Africa where dogs are considered, you know, partners.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just cut in really quick with
No, sure.
So I guess it was Rudyard Kipling who actually was talking about, you know, how ancient the partnership between human and canine is. I mean, they're largely considered the first domesticated animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so he, you know, we always hear the phrase man's best friend, but he had actually said that the dog was man's first friend.
Oh, that's good.
And I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. Wow. Yeah, we're gonna come back to that theme definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, there's tales of there's, you know, it's still a black dog. There's tales of white black dogs. So black dog seems to be just the name of this apparition. Finally, of course, the most famous, maybe today, the most famous black dog story is the Hound of the Baskervilles, right? But what struck me in reading about black dogs and how common these stories were, especially in the English countryside, and also they're creatures of wide open spaces, like out in the moors is very common, right? But what finally struck me about the Hound of the Baskervilles is, to readers of that story at the time, it seems to me they would already have been familiar with like multiple of these types of stories. You know, like when that story comes out. So we read it as, oh, it's a Sherlock Holmes story with this strange ghostly hound. To them, it would seem, now that, I mean, this is just me conjecturing, it would be something like, oh, you know, it's a Fox Mulder story with a chupacabra. Oh, it's a chupacabra. Yeah, right. They would come into it knowing, like, oh, this is the story. You know, this is their monster of the week.
Right.
Like,
they don't need the explanation necessarily of what a black dog is. They come in with
a lot of background, cultural background information, which just makes Hound of the Baskervilles that much more fun. So hopefully one of these days we will get to do, you know, a ghost hunt of some kind, and maybe we'll find a black dog of our own.
And I think we just have to remember, just, you know, let it be.
Let it be.
You know,
maybe it wants to be our friend. Maybe it wants to come home with us. We're not going to like force anything, obviously, but maybe it's our friend. Maybe you and I get to have a little black doggy.
Yeah, maybe
that'd be awesome. A little ghost dog for us.
And I'm hoping that maybe ghost dogs, if you're a ghost, then maybe you don't have to.
Yes, ghostly poop. You just leave it there.
Right. It just sort of disapparates.
Yeah, it's like ectoplasm, and then the rain takes care of it.
I'm glad that you went first, and I'm glad that you picked the black dog, because my first one builds off of what you were talking about. Full disclosure, I actually started reading a book, which I'm going to talk about when we do our book recommendation. And this is part of what made me want to do an episode about dogs. And when you had mentioned that you were doing the black dog, I stopped reading this book. I paused because I didn't want to. I was like, I want Ben to tell me about this. But something that I found in the book that I then, you know, investigated further is we just talked about the black dog and how they're often guardians. You know, the black dog seems to, if anything, it might frighten somebody. I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of stories about a black dog when encountered that it seems like the black dog wants to just kind of scare you within an inch of your life and then leave, unless you keep, you know, keep on at it, like that guy that you talked about who
like the ding dong with a milk pail.
Yes, exactly. But there is a sinister form of black dog, and this one is known as a bar guest. Not the guest of a bar, it's a bar guest. So the bar guest is a black dog, but it is a type of black dog that is malicious, that is devilish. Something I found interesting is that the word barg is an old word meaning town. You think about barg or, burg, things like that. And then it's generally accepted that guest is the Northern English pronunciation of the word ghost. So bar guest.
Oh, okay.
You're actually talking about the town ghost.
Yeah.
Now, this ghost is a shape changer. It's been known to appear as a fearsome goblin, a headless man, a rabbit, or even, oddly enough, a cat. But its most common form is that of a black dog, usually a very ferocious, shaggy dog. But there will it'll always have some sort of remarkable or ferocious kind of appearance that shows that this is no ordinary dog, even other than just being large and having fiery eyes. Some are known to be headless. Some have feet that point backwards. I noticed this is a thing in a lot of myth or a lot of folklore, again, particularly in like the Anglo-Saxon world. Backwards pointed feet, right.
Yeah.
Right. Fiery eyes and, fiery breath. If you think of a stereotypical hellhound, this is kind of giving you the image of what you're looking at. Oftentimes, it's not even seen, though. Apparently, oftentimes it's only heard, and it's said that its howl is enough to turn a man's blood cold. So a barguest is never a good thing to see, right? Okay. It's always an ill omen. There's a lot of folklore that says to see one once is bad times ahead. If you see one twice, you will die.
Ooh, see one once, bad times ahead. See one twice, you're likely dead.
Oh, that is great. Write that down.
Put it on a t-shirt.
The black bar guest t-shirt. In fact, bar guests are even known to lay across walkways or in front of people's houses where the occupant is close to death. So they're kind of a death omen. Similar to the guy that you talked about. So it's also said that if you were to engage a bar guest, if it bites you or if it claws you, that wound will never heal. You'll have that wound for the rest of your life. Interestingly enough, there's also tales about an amphibious version of a bar guest that is said to haunt bodies of water. And it's generally described as having just one cycloptic eye in the middle of its forehead.
Nice.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it covers a lot of the same ground as the black dog, but this is definitely the diabolical.
Yeah, it's after you.
Yes, this one is after you.
And it's the version that hits towns and waterways and stuff like that, more crowded areas. The black dog seems to be in lonely places.
So I want to tell you a quick story, and that was in this book that I will talk about later. And you could argue whether or not this was a black dog or a bar guest. But apparently in England, there was this nurse who was taking care of two small children. There were tales that this black dog was lurking around, this bogey, right? When you get into the English folklore, you see a lot of these things described as bogeys. She was getting ready to leave the children and to go home at night. And the children said, well, what do you do if you encounter... Sorry, the children are like, but Mom, what will you do if you encounter the bogey? And she said, well, I will just grab that dog and fold him up and put him in my pocket. And she left. And as she was walking home through the dark, murky streets, that English fog was rolling in. And sure enough, this black dog appeared and started running around her and chanting, "Put me in your pocket, put me in your pocket, put me in your
that's
pocket,
so
put me in
awful
your
and
pocket."
creepy.
And this and the woman claimed that this happened, and so much so that people even hypothesized that maybe she had heard a train far away.
Yeah.
Because it had like that rhythm.
Yeah.
But her story is that this dog was running around her saying, "Put me in your pocket, put me in your pocket, put me in your pocket."
That's awesome.
So I love that scary story.
Yeah, that's a good. That's got some good creepiness to it. That's great. The bar guest. Okay. Well, my next folkloric dog creature is called the adlet.
Adlet.
And the adlet. This comes from the mythology, the Inuit mythology of Greenland and the Hudson Bay and Labrador region. And they are dog-human hybrid creatures. They're not changelings. They're described as, having the upper half of a human and lower half of a dog often. Now,
like a centaur type of configuration?
It seems a little unclear.
Okay.
Because this is very mythological, but let me backtrack a minute. The idea to do this one came to me from local librarian Rose Turner, our friend.
Uh-huh.
So I had stopped by the library and I was looking for returning books, and Rose was like, the library was getting rid of a bunch of books, and I pulled this one out and I thought you should have it. This is a picture book called The Essential Worldwide Monster Guide. So it's not a big book. It's a young reader's picture book. What struck me about it is it's very easy for us to run a podcast like this and to slip into maybe Eurocentric folklore because it's the easiest at hand for us, right? This is really worldwide monsters. And so we have monsters from we have South America, Abatwa, well, they've got the Loch Ness monster. They've got their Scandinavian, Greek, Armenia, Russian, Ravana, China.
Is it a big book?
Japan, not a big book. Crazily, it's just a very good array of monsters from truly all over the world. And that's where I ran across the adlet. Now, the downside of this book is, the illustrations aren't particular to my taste, but also there's not a lot. It's got that kind of rhyming thing going for it. So it's never trust an adlet. Though you find a fellow friendly, like his smile despite the drooling when he says, "I will not eat you," you can bet he's only fooling. But there's actually so much more to it than that once I started digging around.
Wait, what was it again? See one once, tough times ahead. See one twice,
you're
surely dead. You're
yes.
likely dead.
Yeah, but it got more fun as I poked around. So I'm just gonna read you a bit from. I know I love my readings. I feel like half the thrill of this podcast is to pretend I'm in an ancient library, pulling out tomes and saying like, "Well, let us consult. This is Larousse Dictionary of World Folklore."
Blow the dust off of it.
The adlet, yes. Dog people, a fabulous race believed by the Inuit to be the descendants of an enormous red dog. Now, this is the common myth that kind of comes back to. They are said to be the result of a beast marriage between the dog and an Inuit woman, which produced 5 monstrous children and 5 dogs. The dogs were set adrift on a raft by their mother and drifted across the sea to beget between them the white races. But the monsters produced a terrible race of bloodthirsty cannibalistic warriors called the Adlet by the Labrador groups and the Urquidlit by those west of the Hudson Bay. This mythical people is also recognized by tribes in Greenland and Baffinland.
What was that line about getting between them and the white people?
Well, that's what further reading it uncovered a little bit more about the mythology, or some more conjecture, I guess.
Okay.
So let me see if I can and honestly, like I'm no extra expert, but I read some stuff about cultural bearings of the dog husband, and this is like from a mythological book by a person named Bridget Sohn. But it posits that this is partially possibly like a cargo myth where you make a pact with the incoming people who are not quite human,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're like a woman may quote unquote marry one of these creatures, and then there's trade between them, and so some people have posited that this is I don't know, the arrival of the Norsemen to these areas, and then later colonists and stuff like this.
Interesting.
So yeah, it kind of went on and on, but it was very, I guess I'd say, a lot of academic conjecture, but it's really interesting. So it's like tribal relationships and cultural relationships between people, kind of like lead you to have these, I don't know, hybrid creatures. And it also gets back into like dogs as sort of human creatures, because dogs, like we kind of keep beating around there, they have kind of a funny connection to people. It's different than any of the other animals. They are, like you said, first friend. So they act more like people, but they're not people. And you can see how that idea could apply to strange incoming cultures, right?
Right. Yeah.
And also, just final thought was it also bears to me some similarities of early on groups split, and you get things like the race of Cain, like the cursed race that wanders and is sent away and maybe comes back.
So is the adlet, mentioned if it says that it won't eat you, don't be fooled. So is the adlet considered a malicious creature or a friendly creature, or 6 of one, half a dozen of the other?
Seems like like it's a margin creature, right? It's something that can be traded with, but not quite trusted. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's sort of interesting, again, as sort of a half man, half dog. Even thinking about, we see this in like a werewolf and stuff like that. But I see that also speaking to kind of the bestial nature of humans as well, and this sort of eternal struggle that humans have between their, being an animal and having a higher intelligence.
And I think that is all going to tie together in my third pick, because I think that ends up being the theme between, which is like what makes this whole discussion really interesting, because it's dogs kind of stepping into that realm between man and beast, right?
Right.
They kind of like get that halfway place.
Yeah.
Dogs, for all their familiarity, for all their hearth and hominess, they are sort of like liminal creatures in themselves.
You've talked about a couple of books, and I alluded to this book that I want to recommend, that I began reading. The book I have, it's called very simply Black Dog Folklore.
Nice.
And it's by a guy called Mark Norman. Like I said, I began reading it, and then when we talked about doing this episode, I put it aside because I didn't want to spoil myself for what we might be talking about.
Right.
But this book is really fantastic. And one of the things that I have particularly enjoyed about this book, being only about a quarter of the way through, he approaches it from a folkloric angle. Okay. From a cryptozoological angle. He comes into this as sort of like, what do dogs mean to the human psyche? But he is also talking about it as, so he talks to and collects all this information from, he's British, and he has collected all of this information from other British professors who have collected black dog stories throughout, the United Kingdom, and compiled these things.
Okay.
And so he's very he approaches it all in a very open sort of way, but also a realistic sort of way. So in other words, what I'm saying is he's not necessarily saying like, oh, here are a bunch of black dog fairy tales. He's saying here are a bunch of black dog encounters, because many of them are very recent. I mean, there's very old ones, ancient ones, obviously.
Sure.
And then there are ones where it's like, in 1927, so-and-so was walking up to this chapel and saw this black dog that he described as being, the size of a cow or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's just like collecting all this information and approaching it kind of scientifically, folklorically, and it's just and it's written. It's really well written, and it's interesting to see. We have talked about the commonality that you find in different tales from different regions, and kind of finding all of these black dog stories that have all of these similarities. And something he talks about too in this book, just really quick, is he does talk about language a little bit, and he talks about how we refer to these as black dogs, but they're not always black. There are some that are white, there are some that are yellow, there's even stories about some that are red. But he said that referring to it as a black dog is similar. It's just an old English way of saying something kind of spectral. That spectral dog is really a better term. But I always think of Tolkien talking about the Nazgul as the Black Riders.
Right.
And how, I mean, yes, they have like black cloaks and stuff, but like that the black doesn't really
the black
refer
means
to
spectral
a color.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And even it's funny. He even talks about one part where he talks about like dogs always being described as having eyes like saucers, and we hear that even in other stories. But he talks about how the first written account of that, they wouldn't have had saucers, that's like a translation thing, and that it's really more just like the description was like bulbous eyes, and it's sort of just the way it got translated into a modern language means saucer. So anyway, a lot of interesting stuff in this book, and like I said, I'm only a quarter of the way into it, but highly recommended. Black Dog Folklore by Mark Norman, and it's got some really nice illustrations.
Lovely. Well, I guess I'm going to recommend, I actually came in thinking I was going to recommend, I'm reading Terry Pratchett's Small Gods, which is it's just fun and witty, and it's one of his Discworld books. When I started, but when I, was piling my books up for this podcast, I realized that I think I'm going to recommend Dictionary of World Folklore, put together by, let's see, who was it? Allison Jones, A Remarkable Guide to the Hidden History of Humankind. And it's just, it's a dictionary-ish, it's a reference book, right? But it's really, really good. And it's got such an interesting array of stuff. Like it's not just creatures, it's saints and concepts and different in Arthurian legend and all this stuff. This is one of the books when I told my friend Rebecca that I was doing this podcast, she like grabbed it off the shelf and was like, you should take a look through this one. And it's one of these ones where just about anything, any page you open up, it's going to have something interesting on it. And like, so here's a keys and keyholes, symbols of power and enabling, right? And it'll just go on about that. And truly another one that is really good snippet from across the world. It's just called Dictionary of World Folklore.
Okay.
And it's published by Larousse. Yeah, just a really solid folklore reference book. It's got like pretty solid black and white illustrations in it. In that sense, it feels like maybe a scholarly monster manual in that way, right?
Okay.
These pen and ink illustrations feel maybe one step in the direction of academia from early D&D art.
Okay.
If that gives you a feeling for it.
Okay, so we talked a lot about black dogs, but this episode isn't about just black dogs or spectral dogs. It's just about dogs from folklore. And so I want to turn to a Greek myth that I find really fascinating for a number of reasons. So, have you ever heard of the Tumeshan fox?
No.
Okay, so the other thing I should point out, this story is a little bit of a twofer for the dog episode, and you'll see what I mean in a minute.
Okay.
So the Tumeshan fox was this monstrously sized vixen. So she's also sometimes called the Cadmean vixen. And she's a man-eater. She has been terrorizing the countryside around Thebes. Now, her exact origin is unknown, but it's said that she may have been one of the many monstrous offspring of Echidna. So if you remember your Greek mythology, Echidna was one of the first big, huge monsters who gave birth to, the Hydra and Cerberus and the Sphinx, and basically the majority of monsters in Greek mythology, right? The heavy hitters were children of Echidna.
Okay.
And so the Tumeshan fox is thought to be one of these as well. Now, a little bit of backstory. This fox was sent to terrorize Thebes by Dionysus, of all people, or of all gods, rather. And, we think of Dionysus as the god of wine and revelry, but apparently he had petitioned to become the patron god of Thebes, and Thebes wasn't into it, so he was like, well, screw you guys. Have fun with this fox. And so the fox is terrorizing, like I said, terrorizing the countryside, and hunters cannot catch this fox because what they realize is that this fox has a destiny, and that destiny is to never be caught. King Creon, he realizes after consulting oracles and things like that, well, this fox is destined to never be caught, so all we can do is we're going to have to make a sacrifice once a month. And so they sacrifice a child to this fox once a month from terrorizing the rest of the city. So some time goes by, and Amphitryon, who, again, if you remember your Greek mythology, this is actually Hercules, we're talking Greek, so Heracles. This is Heracles' father, Amphitryon.
Okay.
Well, I guess his adopted father. Zeus is his father, but anyways. So Amphitryon and his wife go to Thebes, and Amphitryon goes to the king and says, hey, look, I need some Theban warriors to help me with this other thing I'm doing. What can I do to get some warriors from you? The king says, well, you know what? This fox is terrorizing and eating people. If you can get rid of this fox, I'll give you however many warriors you need. Amphitryon says, okay, great. So he goes out, he tries to hunt this fox, and he can't catch it. So then Amphitryon remembers, he starts thinking back, and he remembers of a story about a hound named Laelaps. So this hound Laelaps is actually one of Zeus's dogs, or maybe Zeus's only dog, I don't know. And Laelaps is on Earth, and he's being taken care of by a man named Cephalus. And Laelaps, being the hound of Zeus, is destined to catch anything he hunts. And so Amphitryon says, well, perfect, there's my solution. So he goes and he talks to Cephalus, and Cephalus says, yeah, we'll go out and we'll catch that fox. So Cephalus brings Laelaps the hound to Thebes, to the countryside. Soon enough, Laelaps finds the Tumeshan fox and starts chasing her. And so the two are running around. They're both, these are giant godlike fox and hound.
Mm-hmm.
Now the fox is destined to never be caught, and the hound is destined to catch whatever he pursues. So they are running around and literally tearing up the landscape. And at times, it seems like the fox has gotten away, but then Laelaps will find her again, and then it seems like Laelaps has the upper hand, but then the fox will escape, and this just keeps going on and on and on. And it's creating such a ruckus that the gods notice. And so Zeus looks down, and he's like, what's going on down here? He's like, oh, my hound, which is destined to catch whatever he pursues, is after this Tumeshan fox, which is destined to escape anything that pursues her. And he says, well, that's not right. This is a problem. And Zeus finally decides that a paradox like this cannot exist on Earth. So he intervenes and he turns both creatures to stone. And then, like so many Greek myths, what does he do? He takes them and he puts them in the sky as constellations.
Right.
And those
I knew that was coming.
constellations are Canis Major and Canis Minor.
And they're always turning and they're always in chase.
Exactly.
Yes. Nice.
So something that I love about this myth, which perhaps speaks to the Greek mindset, speaks to, perceptions of godhood and things like that, is this story actually shows that sometimes the gods screw up too, right? That the gods are fallible, which is a far cry from, a traditional Christian conception of God, which is this infallible thing that you've got Zeus saying like, I think we messed this up here. And
they throw up their hands a lot. Yeah, this is the Greek and Norse are particularly rife with this kind of wonderful turn.
Right. Their gods are very powerful, very wise, but for lack of a better term, are human. Yeah. So I really like that story, and I think it's a story that you don't always hear, especially considering that it's two pretty well-known constellations of Canis Major and Canis Minor.
Yeah. I would not have known that it was the giant vixen.
Yeah, it's again, it's this like pretty obscure, I would say, Greek myth, but has relevance even today.
Very, very good. That was like that was a good story time. That was a good narration.
Oh, by the way, also the ending there is that Amphitryon goes to King Creon, and Creon agrees to give him the warriors that he needed. He's like, well, you didn't technically catch the fox, but the fox is technically gone, so sure, I'll keep up my end of the bargain.
Wow.
So all's well that ends well.
I'm very excited about this, but this is I think my most messy one. This is the specifically medieval werewolf.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes. So I have read the master's thesis from our friend Ksenia, who worked for Macmillan for a while.
Yeah.
Like you knew Ksenia. Mm-hmm. And some time back she had sent me her werewolf thesis, and I had lost it, so I asked her for it again. And it's very, her take is very interesting because she argues that that during this specifically medieval period, like the idea of humans turning into wolves is quite old. There's a lot of like antiquity and classical stories of this, but that when the werewolf concept reaches a certain point in the medieval period, in these stories, like werewolves are etymologically not actually werewolves; they're more like werhuntwolves. Because werhuntwolves, because they have a quality. They have dog-like qualities as well as human qualities and wolf qualities. So the idea is that, particularly in medieval society, right, like times wolves were on the periphery of things. They could come into like populated areas and be a threat to livestock, and also develop tastes for people, like human flesh, right? And so the wolf becomes like a symbol of absolute violence and avarice and lust and all of these things. And so to become a wolf would be to sort of give into all the worst things, right? So people need to be protected from wolves. But at the same time, we have these dog companions, and they are wolf-like, and but they obey our commands. They are, as you said, man's first friend. And she picks up four of these stories, like Guillaume and de Palerne, Arthur and Gorlagon, the werewolf. But she kind of ties these werewolf tales together with certain elements that happen in them.
Sounds painful for the werewolf.
Well, In these stories, there like some of the common things that happen again and again is like the wolf will end up obeying a human command, or become penitent, or have loyalty to a king, right?
Mm.
Like in Bisclava, he had no desire to leave the king. And so what ends up having these wolves, it basically what's fascinating about it to me is that it takes this sort of like binary thinking of man and wolf and adds in dog qualities, right? Like
Mm.
obedience and loyalty and things like this, and creates a sort of like Trinitarian thinking between man, wolf, and dog, uh, which I just think is like it gives us back to that, to dogs themselves and these dog qualities existing in that sort of liminal between space, right? Um, and there's also like it also ties into their there are similar like saint stories like this.
Mm-hmm.
So Saint Francis has his famous, he tames a wolf, Grigio, this wolf. And then I learned about Saint Modwena, like the 7th century Irish saint, who also tames a wolf, and then the wolf sort of becomes a member of the church community and guards the flocks. It becomes basically a guard dog.
Hmm.
And to me, what's interesting about this is it's sort of like almost like this uh, something like genetic memory or something of remembering where dogs came from, right?
Right.
And it's sort of this idea of like, oh, a saint can tame a wolf and make them act dog-like, which is so very similar to kind of what actually happened with people and wild dogs or wild wolves, the first breeding experiments, right? And dogs, go ahead, you had something.
No, I was just going to, I was going to agree with you that dogs didn't, just appear out of the hills as friendly, friendly companions. I mean, they were wild dogs and wolves, and so, where that mutual relationship comes from. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so it also has like, I don't know if you're familiar with the ossuary wolves. They're similar to the medieval wolf stories, except they're sort of like like a tribe of warriors that like Irish mythological tribe of warriors that are have you seen the Wolf Walkers? Do you know there's sort of a trilogy of animated movies with the
I know of it. I'm ashamed to say I have not seen it.
Oh, the girls love it. So there's the Book of Kells, there's Song of the Sea, which is quite beautiful, and then there's Wolf Walkers, which is sort of based on these ossuary wolves. But that's almost like you put on a wolf skin and you go wolfing. So you are taking on wolf qualities, and then, but there are also some like things where you fall asleep in your body and are able to walk about in a wolf's body, right? And then there's other legends where if you get a hold of the wolf and start scraping off the skin, you'll find the person inside. So there's all these sort of different ways of becoming a wolf. But to me, it's both a memory of, especially when you get into the saint stories and the in that sort of dog wolf human trinity, you get into a sort of a breeding, like this memory of breeding, but also you get into sort of the medieval concept of the interior life, in which case
Explain
we're all
that.
Well, I think in that case, like, the human is the higher self, the wolf is the lowest self. Our own hearts in our various selves, like we're the dogs, we're the ones trapped between wolf form and human form being like rational and reliable and oriented towards high things, and the wolf being avarice and gluttonous and lustful and oriented towards the low things, right?
Like giving, like all of those things come from obeying an emotion without stopping to rationalize it.
Right. And the dog, even in our relationships to dogs, right? Like the dog, you can tell it's caught between those two things. It wants to chase, it wants to go, it wants to do what it wants to do, but you're like, no. And you can see it resisting, but trying, right?
Right.
Like, I am going to sit. I'm forcing myself to do it. So the dog becomes this like, this is making me love dogs more, man.
And even thinking about like a dog's inability to obfuscate, right? Like a dog, like
Right.
there's two dogs here. If one goes to the bathroom in the house, it's easy for me to find out who did it because I will walk in and ask who did it, and one will just be staring at me like normal, and then the other one will be looking very sheepish and ashamed, and that's how I know who did it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, I think it's interesting too, thinking about these more medieval werewolves, or maybe like origins of werewolves, versus maybe the more commonly now held view of a werewolf, which really stems from the 40s, right? Stems from the Wolfman and silver bullets and,
right.
Things like that.
The point is this, like her thesis statement isn't this, but to me it is the medieval werewolf of these stories is a more interesting creature because there's so much more going on.
So I pulled it up because I haven't memorized it, but this seems appropriate. The poem from the Wolfman movie, from the original.
Okay.
I'm going to say it in my spookiest voice. Yeah. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. So this is my last and final one, and this one I was really excited to talk to you about. So picture it. This is rural France in 1764.
Oh, nice.
The United States is not even a country yet. People are simple farmers. They tend herds of sheep and cattle. They grow crops. They're deeply religious, and they have very little contact with the monarchy or with Paris or anything. Even though it's 1764, they're still very much kind of this medieval community. There's a young girl whose name is Marie-Jeanne Vallée, and she reports that while she was out tending to a herd of cows, that she saw a creature that was, quote, like a wolf, but not a wolf. And this creature tried to attack her, but she got away, and the bulls in the herd that she was tending actually charged and frightened this creature off. Later on, there was another girl named Jeanne Boulet. She was 14 and she was tending her flock of sheep. And she was found killed by a creature. Her throat had been ripped and she had been shredded. Obviously, the community is upset about this. And they say, well, this wolf needs to be stopped. This creature is on the rampage between 1764 and 1767. There are over 600 reported attacks of
Holy
this creature.
moly.
Yes. And 500 deaths.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is all documented. So this is
Sure.
the thing, is we're not in the realm.
This
We're not
is
in
modern.
the realm. And it's fairly modern, right? We're not in the realm of fairy tale right now.
Right.
This is real documented stuff. In fact, in this time period of 1764, this is actually when you start to see the preponderance of print media and newspaper. And so this is actually largely considered the first news sensation. So even people in the United States, well, it's not the United States yet, but people in North America are hearing about this and reading about this crazy story that's happening in rural France.
So wait, what year is this? Is it 1760?
1764.
Yeah, so like Benjamin Franklin could be reading about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the king is hearing about all of this too, and he's like, well, this is terrible. And there's actually a story about a young boy who, I don't remember how old he was, but he was with a group of his friends, and this creature attacked, and he managed to scare the creature off. And the king gave him a reward, also gave him a free education, which in that time, I mean, that'd be cool now, but in that time was particularly...
He canceled his college loans.
Right, exactly. And so hunters are going out to try to find this creature. And actually, by the time we get to the end of 1764, so in December, it's actually largely it's largely held that there's actually a pair of these creatures. Now, here's the thing. I keep saying these creatures.
Mm-hmm.
All of the reports from people who survive the attack or survive seeing this creature, they all say it's kind of wolf-like, but it's not a wolf.
Nice.
So it's described as being very large. It's described as, some describe it as having a reddish color. And it's also described as having a long, thin tail with a tuft at the end.
Huh.
Now, here's the thing, too. You have to remember, these are shepherds living in rural France. They know what a wolf looks like. They deal with wolves all the time.
Yeah.
So if they're saying, what I saw is not a wolf, you can believe them. It is not a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
The other interesting thing is that all of the victims, they're all attacked in similar ways. It seems like the creature always seems to go for the throat or the back of the neck. There are a lot of victims that are found completely headless. And what is curious about that is that the heads are gone, but the bodies are still there. Some of the bodies are seen partially eaten. I know this is gruesome, but these are the reports. Hunting parties are going out trying to find, and some of them do encounter this creature, but they have stories about the bullets bouncing off of whatever this is. During this time, it also gains the name. So this is the beast of the Gévaudan. Okay. Gévaudan is the region in France that we're talking about.
Okay.
So there are hunting parties and everything, and everybody is even then speculating on what this is. Now, it being a deeply religious rural area, a lot of people think that this is some sort of beast sent by God to punish them. Mm-hmm. During this time, so during this period of time, from 64 to 67, there are very large wolves that are killed by hunting parties, but the attacks don't stop. And then finally, in 1767, a hunter named Jean Chastel shoots this huge gray wolf and kills it. And after that, the attacks stop. However, the beast is taken to, I don't know, a doctor or whatever, and is actually stuffed to put on display. And the doctor says, when he's dissecting this thing and shows there's no evidence in this animal, there's no remains, there's no human remains in its stomach or anything like that. So yes, the attacks stop, but no one knows if that's just a coincidence or not.
Right.
So I'm curious if you have any theories, because there are a lot of theories, I think a lot of good theories, about what this...
Well, but was the mystery ever solved? Was the mystery ever solved?
No.
Okay, I do have a theory, and here's and I bet it's going to be the same as yours, because the tufted tail makes me think lion, and I also was wondering if we would, like, what went through my head was like, oh, is this story going to have like a great, amazing, sort of preternaturally great hunter going after this thing? And then I thought of Kraven the Hunter from Spider-Man, and I thought of his lion vest, and then that solidified it for me as like, oh, I'm guessing it's a lion that was brought up for like a king, like somebody's personal zoo or something like this, which you can imagine the wealthy in France at that time doing.
Yes.
And then it gets out, and it gets crazy for not being in its natural habitat.
Well, so real quick, going back to what you said about some sort of, preternatural hunter of amazing skill. So what's interesting is that years after, when the story is written down and begins to be retold by this clergyman, he describes Jean Chastel as he was saying his prayers and he was, doing all of this stuff, all of the, to become holy. And that's what allowed him, gave him the strength to defeat this creature.
There it is.
And of course, there is absolutely no evidence of him doing any of that. That was just was just the extra pepper in the stew.
Yeah.
I want to come back to your lion theory because there are some there are theories that I think make sense, and there are theories that are wacky. One of the things, and you can actually find pictures and old engravings and stuff. Some people were saying that this was a werewolf, which is part of why they also couldn't, find the creature a lot of times. So I mentioned that it's a monster sent by God to punish them. There's speculation that it's a werewolf. There's later speculation that it's actually a serial killer, that it's a mass murderer who is draping himself in furs and wolf skins and things like that, because there are so many things that are weird. For example, why would a creature take the head of a victim and leave the body? I mean, there's not a lot to eat on the head. That's not the best part.
Right.
There are also even wackier theories about it being a holdover, some sort of prehistoric holdover, much like the Loch Ness Monster. Some people think it's a holdover dinosaur.
Saber
so
cat
that's
or
a theory
dinosaur.
as well.
Okay.
Right. So two theories that I like. So one is that, like you mentioned, it's a lion, or some have even speculated a hyena. Now, this is where the lion thing gets interesting. People, even in rural France, would know what a lion looks like because, as you said, they would see them in a menagerie, in a zoo, or in a parade, something like that.
Yeah, or at least somebody would have said lion.
Right, yeah. However, what they would not have necessarily seen is a subadult male lion.
Okay.
So the subadult male lion, it's just kind of starting to get that rough rather than like a full mane. Because if you're going to have a lion in a zoo to show the public, you're going to have, like you said, if you're aristocracy and you have a lion, well, you're going to make sure that this lion looks magnificent. So you're not going to show off a more scraggly lion that's, still growing up. The other reasons why I like this theory is it talks about a pair. So it could be a pair of subadult male lions who are inexperienced in hunting. So that's why you see heads gone, but not bodies, things like that. There are also talks of claw marks, and wolves, like dogs, they don't primarily attack with their claws. They primarily attack with their teeth. So you wouldn't really see claw marks and shredding from a wolf or a dog attack the way you would from a big cat. Also, the fact that hunting styles, hunting tactics, that's what cats are known for. They're known for going for the neck or going for, from behind the back of the neck, even, tigers and things like that. So that all starts to make sense why these people have their throats ripped out.
Yeah.
Now, the other theory that is interesting is, so there's the matter of bullets seeming to bounce off of it.
Yes. It's lions who have somehow managed to armor themselves.
Another theory says that Jean Chastel, the man who shot the wolf and is largely credited with ending this reign of terror, had a giant mastiff who was reddish. And there are war dogs that have armor.
Oh.
And so this could have been a war dog that went rabid or whatever.
Yeah.
And that would explain, the bullets bouncing off and stuff like that. Furthermore, this theory states that Jean Chastel, that this was his dog. And in order to cover up, that's why he went out, shot this wolf, said, "Oh, I got it. It wasn't my dog."
Simultaneously put the dog down.
That's the theory. And that's the thing is we'll never know. We'll never know exactly what happened with the beast of the Gévaudan.
No, but it's another one of those fascinating things where something clearly was happening,
Yeah.
And you'll like with the chupacabra, like you probably never will get to the bottom of it, but something was going on.
Right. And so, yeah, it's almost like the first modern cryptid.
Yeah. This is we're back towards the beginning of cryptids. That's great.
What I like about it too is like, we're tempted to say like, oh, well, maybe it was a wolf that was sick and looked funny, or maybe it was this, maybe it was that. But the thing that we don't understand is the people living there knew wildlife better than we do.
Yeah. Like a lot of these ideas never give people enough credit, like regular people enough credit. Right.
Like they know their landscape. They know the predators that are out there.
Yeah.
And like I said before, if they say it's not a wolf, it's not a wolf.
Well, what I want to see now is because Benjamin Franklin was, the American ambassador to France.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see a story where the real reason Benjamin Franklin was sent to France, Benjamin Franklin versus the Beast of the Gévaudan.
Oh man, this is just like we talked about. What was it, Leonardo versus
the vampire?
Yeah,
was it a vampire? Yeah. So now we've moved a little bit forward in history. Now we've got Benjamin Franklin with his electricity contraptions.
Oh, can you imagine
going after the Beast of the Gévaudan?
I think we need to do this. I think we need to do historical figures.
Story. Well, historical figures battling early cryptids and ghouls is a great concept.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. Like they can even look back. They'd be like, well, years ago, Leonardo da Vinci solved that vampire problem.
Uh-huh.
We'll ask the wizard, the American wizard, Benjamin Franklin. He's the one who can solve this. Why are we talking like this? I don't know.
What did he want? Oh, I don't know. Mr. Franklin was asking me a lot about wolves and looking up information on wolves. I don't know what that's all about. Said he was heading to France.
But he gave me these bifocals and they work a treat.
I'm going to sit by my pot-bellied stove. Really quick, I just wanted to throw in too, there is actually a statue called the Maid of Gévaudan, which is of that 14-year-old girl, or maybe she was younger. Well, the first one that actually had like a I don't know if it was a spear or just like a stick that she broke, but it's a cool statue of her like defending against this creature. And if you look up the Beast of the Gévaudan, you can see, like I said, all of these contemporary engravings and stuff, because this was in the papers, this was in the news that this was going on. And so it's
wonderful woodblock illustrations on pamphlets. That'd be great.
Right. That's exactly, like I said, Google Beast of the Gévaudan and you'll find it.
Cool. Wow, that was a good one.
Well, thanks. All right. So, man, we talked about a lot of different dogs, spectral dogs, and it's gotten me thinking too, like I said, just the relationship between man and dog. I mean, I say man in the poetic sense, but humans and canines, and what they say about ourselves and how we relate to them, and
what an odd place they sit in.
Yeah. Again, something that's in this book, the Black Dog Folklore, again, it talks about how like not only are they like our first friend, but it's also, it's been a partnership. Other animals that we have domesticated has been, oftentimes to subjugate them, right? For food or for work. But dogs have traditionally, been alongside us. And, they even talk about, the cat is also alongside us, but there's not that quite that same partnership.
There's not a sense of camaraderie or we're working on the same project. Like you can go out with a dog and you're working on the same project, like the way they, the way they round up sheep, like stuff like this, right? It's like, oh, we are actually two very different beings
with the same similar goal.
With a common goal, and we're both like working on it. Yeah. And then we eat dinner at the end of the day.
It's really
something.
Angry messages from cat lovers. I love cats too.
I embrace those angry messages.
Send them all to Ben.
But I get it that it's a deeply psychologically interesting relationship.
Yeah.
So, wow, this was a good one. So, you want to do favorites?
Yeah. All right. So let's see. So you had the black dog.
Mm-hmm.
You had the adlet. And then you had the medieval
medieval werewolf.
Werewolf.
Yeah, not the classic werewolf.
Oh man, it's tough because they were also interesting. I think I'm gonna have to go with the medieval werewolf because I think of the three, that's the one that I'm like, ooh, I want to find out more about that. I mean, I want to find out more about all of them, but this is the one that I find kind of tickling my brain the most.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, and I'm definitely going with Beast of the Jebedon. You saved the best for last. For similar reasons, just because it grabs because it's recent.
Yep.
And I like the idea of folklore being ongoing. And because it's got so many great story possibilities.
And it's reported, it's written down, and again, over 600 attacks. Right?
Yeah,
like that's not just like a couple of crazy people out in the sticks.
No, like 500 people. That's something big is happening.
If I was independently wealthy, I would like fund some sort of dig to go out there and just try to find like bones or something.
Yeah.
You know, just to see. Yeah, it would be cool. Maybe we can make a fringe pilgrimage to that statue.
There you go. I mean, I love fringe pilgrimage. There's so many places we could go. All right.
Well, I think for now, we should probably go home.
I think we'd go walk the dogs. We want to keep them cooped up.
Right. Yes. We both have dog walking to do. All right. That was our dog episode, and we'll be back next time with something new and interesting that has yet to be discovered. But for Ben Hatke, I'm Zack Gialongo.
And for Zack Gialongo, I remain Ben Hatke.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Hey everyone, David Universe here, producer and audio engineer for Ben and Zack's Monster Market. On behalf of the team, thanks for listening. Music for this episode was created by Twinstrumental. If you'd like to see sketches of the creatures discussed on this episode, as well as other mystical goodness, please visit us at monstermarketpod.com, as well as Instagram and Facebook at monstermarketpod. For creature recommendations, or just to say hello, please email us at monstermarketpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, beware, because they be monsters out there.